Imagine finding a field littered with strange metal that bends like paper but cannot be cut or burned. On July 7, 1947, a rancher named Mac Brazel finds exactly that on his land in New Mexico. The military's first response: they tell the world they have captured a flying saucer. 24 hours later, they change the story, sparking a mystery that has lasted for decades. But how did that even happen? Welcome to History Bites, where we take the wildest, weirdest, most jaw-dropping moments in history and explain them fast. If you love the kind of history that sounds impossible but actually happened, subscribe. The year is 1947. World War II ended only 2 years ago. The world is tense. The United States and the Soviet Union are entering a period we call the Cold War. Imagine your school has two rival groups who are constantly trying to outsmart each other, but they never actually fight in the hallways. Instead, they just try to build better gadgets and spy on each other's lockers. That is the Cold War. Everyone is paranoid. Everyone is looking at the sky. In the summer of 1947, people across America start reporting flying discs in the air. It is a national craze. So when Mac Brazel finds a pile of weird debris on his sheep ranch near Roswell, he thinks he might have found one of those discs. He waits a few days, then drives the debris to the local sheriff. The sheriff calls the Roswell Army Airfield. Now this is where history gets genuinely strange. The military sends intelligence officers to the ranch. They don't just pick up the trash. They treat it like the biggest discovery in human history. Here's the part nobody puts in textbooks. The Roswell Army Airfield is home to the 509th Bomb Group. At this exact moment in 1947, they are the only unit in the entire world that knows how to handle nuclear weapons. These are the most elite, highly trained soldiers on the planet. They aren't the type of people to get confused by a kite or a balloon. Yet, on July 8, 1947, they issue an official press release. It says the Army has captured a flying disc. The news travels across the globe in hours. For one day, the world believes aliens have landed in New Mexico. But the very next morning, the military does a massive U-turn. They fly the debris to a higher-ranking general in Texas. He calls a press conference and shows off some ripped rubber and tinfoil. He tells the world it was all a mistake. It wasn't a flying saucer. It was a standard weather balloon. Stop and think about that for a second. The most elite nuclear military unit in the world supposedly couldn't tell the difference between a common weather balloon and a spaceship from Mars. Does that sound right to you? For the next 30 years, the story stays buried. Most people forget about it. But in the late 1970s, researchers start interviewing the people who were there. They hear stories about strange, unbreakable metal and mysterious markings that look like hieroglyphics. This is when the Roswell incident becomes the legend we know today. People start connecting it to Area 51 history, claiming the government hid alien bodies and high-tech ships in secret desert bases. And here's where it gets really wild. The government was lying, but they weren't hiding aliens. They were hiding something much more dangerous for the time. In 1994, the Air Force finally released a massive report that explained everything. The debris Mac Brazel found didn't come from a weather balloon, and it didn't come from another planet. It came from a top-secret project called Project Mogul. Imagine trying to hear a whisper from 3 towns away using a giant stethoscope. That was Project Mogul. The US government was terrified that the Soviet Union would build their own atomic bomb. They needed a way to detect a nuclear explosion on the other side of the planet. Sound travels differently high up in the atmosphere. Project Mogul involved launching long trains of balloons that carried incredibly sensitive microphones into a specific layer of the sky. These microphones could hear the shockwave of a nuclear test thousands of miles away. And the craziest thing, it actually worked. But there was a problem. Project Mogul was a high-level Cold War secret. If the Soviets found out the US could hear their tests, they would find a way to hide them. The US military couldn't tell the truth about the crash because they didn't want the Soviets to know about their giant stethoscope in the sky. Most people don't know this part. The hieroglyphics the witnesses saw on the debris They were actually floral patterns. Because Project Mogul was so secret, the engineers couldn't go to a major factory to get supplies. They bought reinforced adhesive tape from a toy company in New York. That company usually used the tape to make toy gliders for kids. The tape had purple and pink flower designs on it. When the rancher and the soldiers saw those faded flowers on the strange debris, they thought they were looking at an alien language. So why did the military say it was a flying saucer in the first place? Some historians believe it was a double bluff. If they told people it was a saucer and then admitted it was a weather balloon, people would stop asking questions. It was a perfect cover story. They would rather have the world think they were a little bit dumb for misidentifying a balloon than have the Soviets realize their secret spy tech was floating over the desert. This is the bit historians argue about even today. Did the government accidentally start the UFO craze just to keep a Cold War secret? It seems the answer is yes. They traded a secret about microphones for a myth about Martians. By the time the truth about Project Mogul came out in the 1990s, the Roswell UFO crash was already a permanent part of pop culture. There is one more curious fact you should know. While we are talking about myths, Vikings didn't actually have horns on their helmets. That was an invention by costume designers for operas hundreds of years later. Just like the Roswell aliens, sometimes a good story is just more fun than the boring truth. The Roswell incident changed how we look at the sky. It turned a small town in New Mexico into the UFO capital of the world and made us question everything the government tells us. It reminds us that during the Cold War, secrets were the most valuable thing on Earth. History is full of moments that sound impossible, but every single one of them actually happened. That's what makes it better than fiction. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. We post every week, and every video will teach you something your history teacher hasn't mentioned yet. And drop your answer in the comments. If you were a 1947 government official, would you let people believe in aliens to protect a military secret? The Roswell crash wasn't an invasion from space, but a secret mission that stayed hidden in plain sight for 50 years.